What's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the Lexi J Wellness Podcast. I'm your host, Lexi Johnson. This is my husband and co-host, Brett Johnson, and this week we have some Q&As. So we're going through the email. We've got some questions that we're going to answer from some people that have submitted them. In the future, if you ever have any questions or podcast topic ideas that you just like to hear us speak on, you're more than welcome to email those to
pod@lexijwellness.com.
I always am afraid I'm going to mess that up. So
I got you.
Yeah, he's got it. So you're more than welcome to email those anytime you have any suggestions or questions that you want us to speak on or to shed some light on, hear our opinions. We love to hear those. Also, just love to hear your guys' feedback. If there's anything that we could do better or you'd like to hear differently, then
I'll just hear it.
Yeah, we're open to it. Okay, so we have 3 questions that we're going to cover, and I'll just dive right in. So the first one says, what mindset do you have while recovering from an injury? How do you stay motivated and encouraged when many things that fuel you on a daily basis, like workouts and routine, are now different because of that injury?
Okay.
I think you can speak to this even more so than I can.
I don't know about more so, but recently, like I've had I think they call it golfer's elbow is what I was semi-diagnosed as, and really it's just like...
Is that different than tennis elbow?
I don't know.
I've never heard of golfer's elbow, but I have heard of tennis elbow.
I was calling it Tommy John for a while before I actually had it like checked out, and I just refused to go to the doctor to get it checked out because I don't like going to the doctor. But I ended up going because of poison ivy.
Yeah, I kind of sent this question to you and said that you would be able to speak on. I was thinking your ACL because you've torn your ACL.
Oh,
but
okay.
I guess that was really not.
I'm thinking like recent.
Yeah, that wasn't at a point in your life where you had the same structure that you do now.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. But yeah, like something that I'm dealing with like right now is that, and that's how I kind of figured out. At least got halfway. Legit diagnosis whenever I went to go get my shot for poison ivy, that she thought it was golfer's elbow, and it's something that has restricted my ability to do like a lot of the things that I would traditionally do when I work out, like right off the top, pull-ups and chin-ups. I haven't been able to do either of those things like I normally do, which is, I mean, I usually do those I incorporate those into at least 2 or 3 workouts a week, like traditionally, but I haven't been able to do either one of those for months.
Yeah, just a lot of like bicep and tricep work in general.
Yeah. I didn't get to work biceps for a long time, and I'm just now getting back to where I feel like it's semi-normal again. So really the hardest part, which I think this is kind of what the question is geared toward, the hardest part of staying motivated with that kind of thing is not letting the things you can't do derail you from doing the things that you can do. And it's kind of a mind game. It's not fun because you start thinking about all the things that you wish you could do, and that's what you want to dwell on. But you just have to focus on what you are able to do and just kind of grit and power through it.
Yeah, I would agree. Just focusing on the controllables, because it's so easy just to get fixated on the thing that is limiting you right now. And then that is such a spiral, because that's going to fuel more thoughts about, everything that's going wrong. Whereas if you can just focus on what's in your control, what you can manage right now, and an approach or a mindset, since you asked, like, what mindset do you have while recovering from an injury? It's just thinking about the opportunity at hand and, coming to grips with this right now. If you're like lower body injuries, I feel like really take you out even further, because then you can't like get your steps in if you have a weight loss goal or something like that. Like, it really hinders you. You have to get a little bit more innovative when it comes to getting that intentional movement in. But you have to come to grips with what the reality is and where you're sitting right now. Don't dwell on it. Don't think about like, well, I'm just going to start back day one. In the meantime, I'm just going to throw out everything that I've been working toward. Like Brett said, just focus on the controllables. Think about what you have at hand that you can manage, because inevitably that's going to strengthen your resilience, and it's going to strengthen your mental toughness in the future, that when you inevitably hit another speed bump, whether it's an injury or any sort of setback, just in general, you're going to be able to pull it from the memory file. You're going to have that in your log and just say, I'm resilient enough because I've overcome this injury, or I've seen this setback and moved past it.
Yeah. And whenever you do have an injury, there's always one thing, no matter how bad the injury is and how long you're going to be out, there's always one thing that you still can control whenever it comes to your physique, and that's your nutrition. And whether or not you like it, that really puts, that really highlights what most people's weakness is, because it's so hard to stay totally consistent with your nutrition. But that's one way that you can really stay on course, is that, if you can't consistently get in the same workouts that you normally would have been, then you really can hone in on your nutrition and not get derailed.
And I believe that dialing in on your nutrition gives you more confidence than dialing in on a workout routine. And I think that because it is much more difficult to be consistent and to adhere to a nutrition plan. I know for a fact it is, for me at least. Like,
it's a major flex.
Yeah.
If you're just totally consistent.
In this, when you said like you rely a lot on your workouts and your routine to get that motivation and that encouragement from day to day, just kind of keeping you engaged in the task and the overall goal at hand. But more often than not, when I am on my shit nutrition wise, when I'm hitting my macros, I feel untouchable compared to consistently getting workouts in. Like, because that's a 28-minute promise I can make to myself, right? And that's saying something. I don't want to discredit that at all, because showing up consistently and putting in the work in the gym is one thing, and that's something to hang your hat on. But dialing in on your nutrition is a commitment that you make from the time you open your eyes to the time you close your eyes. And that is a huge flex. Like, that develops so much confidence, because it's not just a single decision-making process where you decide to go down into your basement and get a workout in. You decide to go for a walk. Yeah. Which, like, that makes it seem, that kind of discredits the workout side of things. And that's still tough. But I think the nutrition side is much more difficult. So if you're looking to, stack the chips and get confidence somewhere else, nutrition is such an opportunity to dive in. One, you're going to see better results. You're going to be able to, prove that all of the abs are made in the kitchen. And then it's also just strengthening the argument, strengthening your attack for when you are released from that injury, that now you have the tools in your belt that you're going to catapult. Like, if you dive in on that process while you're limited in movement, once movement is integrated back in, it is a rocket ship.
Definitely.
You have any other thoughts? Or are you ready to move on to the second question?
No. Yeah. I mean, it's whenever you compare those two together, solid nutrition and the movement, whenever you get back to being 100%, like, you're unstoppable.
Yeah. All that being said, it sucks when you're injured and nobody likes it. I have a heel spur and I hate it. Like, I
don't feel like most people know that you have as many feet problems as you do. Yeah. You don't really talk about it. And you have a high pain tolerance, but just to give her props where props are due.
Thank you.
She has an incredible pain tolerance, and she deals with feet problems every day.
Yeah. The first couple hours of being awake is pretty painful to put pressure on my right foot for sure. It's in both feet, but my right foot for sure is worse. I sleep in I don't do a very good job of sleeping in it throughout the night because it's so uncomfortable, but I have a sleeping boot, a soft splint that I wear before going to bed, just to kind of hopefully help with mobility and lessen the tension and the pressure that's on that heel spur. But it's something that I deal with, and it's so frustrating because it limits my movement comfortably. I, like Brett said, kind of grit and bear it because I'm just too stubborn to quit at this point. But it is a frustrating thing. Being injured sucks, and it gives you a good perspective when you are feeling 100%. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, my ailments are just kind of something that I basically live with.
Yeah,
it's a chronic thing.
So for anybody who had any doubts or thought that Lexi was just a unicorn out here, she is, but like she has problems that everybody else deals with. We both do.
Got gnarly feet.
Yeah. Don't assume that life is just all sunshine and roses over here.
I also have something wrong with my piriformis, which is a muscle that runs through my glute, and it's kind of funny in a sick, twisted way because what happens is my feet hurt a lot worse, obviously, when I'm on them. So getting off them puts a little, like, that issue is alleviated. However, being in a sitting position in that 90-degree angle, that hurts my piriformis a lot worse. So one of them is going to be flared up. Yeah. It's just a matter of like, choosing your evil at that time, which one I can bear more.
Yeah. But I think that for the most part, we do a pretty darn good job of just adapting and, taking the punches and just rolling with it,
Yeah. I will, just back to the nutrition. I'm glad that you pointed that, because I feel like, I really do. I feel bulletproof when I'm on my game, and when I'm not, it is really, really discouraging to me. Like, that is a knock, because it's something that I have worked so hard to get to a point where I'm better at it, because nutrition is always going to be the thing that I struggle with the most. I am an overeater to my core. I am convinced that I just like don't register as being full most of the time. Like, I very rarely feel full. I could just continue eating. And it's something that I struggle with a lot. And like, I get really down on myself about it, and Brett can attest to that. But when I am on my game and when I am consistently just putting those chips in the deck, it makes me feel so much better. I feel so much more confident and in control. So when you're in a position where you feel out of control and you feel like you don't have as much authority over what's going on when you're limited in movement, I think that is always one thing that you can manage. Do your best at.
Absolutely.
All right, question number 2. Number two. It says, okay, this person is an English major and a writer. She said, I love to hear that you're both readers. What effects from reading do you see in your daily life?
A lot.
Well put.
Next question.
Yes. Hope that answered your question.
I mean, from a routine perspective, like, that's how we start off every day. It's
kind of the catalyst for our day. Yeah.
Yeah. It's really just like the positive stepping stone that begins the day, because what we do every single day is we get up, I start brewing coffee, and then Lexi usually mixes up the protein, and we have a protein coffee down here while we read. And that's really just like the segue into our day. If our schedule allows, we even do that on the weekends.
Yeah. Like, more often than not, we do that on the weekends. I heard a quote once, and it said that a to-do list, or your inbox, is basically a to-do list created for you by other people. So a big deal for us is like in that reading time, and I kind of tie this in because it's just a commitment we've made in the morning just to start our day that way. Because if I wake up and the first thing I do is look at my phone and I look at my inbox, I look at my text messages, I look at the notifications, it immediately sends my brain into a spiral, and that's a spiral not created by me. It's a long list of, that train of thought is something that was set off by someone else, and it doesn't start my day on my own terms. Whereas coming down here and reading, I associate that with like, that is my first conscious decision that I'm making that's going to set the day off on the right foot, the way that we like it. And also just like the nature of us establishing that habit together. It's probably my favorite part of the day, is just him and I together. It's not that we're like conversing. Sometimes we'll pop up and share something that we're reading, but it's just a nice slow way to start our day, because
it's one of the only times of the day that you and I are 100% removed from everything, because nobody else is awake. Mm-hmm. Nobody's trying to get a hold of us. We don't have our phones. It's like the most isolated and removed moment of the day, where we can just be extremely intentional about doing what we're doing and thinking about what we're doing.
Yeah, I think that honestly, that is what has drawn me to reading so much over the past few years. So I am now a huge self-developmental reader. However, I wasn't before. And really what got that started was 75 Hard, because one of the tasks is that you need to read a nonfiction self-development book. And I remember thinking like, there's no way I'm going to read a self-help book. You only read a self-help book like if you're going through a divorce or you're like going through a midlife crisis. And I thought that was silly. But I was like, if I'm going to do 75 Hard, I'm going to follow it to the letter. So I'm going to read this stupid self-development book. And lo and behold, I ended up getting a domino tattoo after reading one of the first ones that just like struck me to my core. If you're wondering, it's The One Thing by Gary Keller, and he talks about domino effects. But I think that framing it in that way, that it's like a developmental book rather than a self-help book, one, changed the narrative for me, because then it was no longer like self-help as in reactionary, meaning that I had a problem that needed to be addressed, because I think that my ego couldn't really take that framing at first, at least.
I think that from the outside looking in, that is the view, like on those types of books. It's like,
I have an issue
we have
and
somebody
we need to
who's
solve it.
Yeah, we have somebody who's riddled with problems, so let's fix you.
Yeah. Where the self-development books, honestly, just like they open my eyes to so many different ideas or concepts that I would never have grasped or considered before. And it just strengthens my tool belt. It rounds me out as a person. It gives me a lot more insight into other ideas. The way that I think about it is that if someone has lived, 40 years, and they wrote a book, and they've contributed a lot of what they learned in those 40 years into that book, and I can read it in a matter of a week or so, then I'm gaining knowledge that someone poured decades into.
Well put. Yeah, I think that's one of the coolest parts about reading is in line with,
it's like a fast pass.
Yeah, I mean, you get to utilize somebody else's hard work and like condensed into one, paperback book. I mean, that's one of the biggest life hacks I've ever heard of, is to take somebody else's knowledge through the course of their life, of everything they've learned, this culmination of success and information that they've gathered over time, and then condensing it into a book and then handing it to you and saying, here, pay me $15 and I'm going to share a wealth of knowledge with you.
Yeah, it's robbery.
Yeah, I mean, it is one of the most overlooked tools ever in really just developing yourself in all areas of life. I mean, there's so many different levels of this. There's, on an introspective side, learning about yourself and learning about, the human experience. There's learning about business and how you can apply all of these things that you learn in this book to all facets of your life to make it so much better. And I've read a wide variety of books, and I can't say that I have one that's particularly like my favorite, but I never get tired of reading all these books and just having, even if I just have one really good takeaway from a book, if there's one page that I have one really good takeaway from, I'm way better off than I was before.
I also think if you're someone that feels overstimulated or anxious or anything like that, much of like what I love about reading is that it forces me to be present and to focus on that thing. You cannot comprehend what you're reading while thinking of a million different things. I've tried, and then I end up going back to the top of that page and restarting, but it forces you to be where your feet are and to be present and to take that in. And yeah. I've read so many more books in the past 3 years than I had probably in my entire life before that.
Yeah.
I read once, I can't remember what book it was from, but it talked about the literacy rate in the United States or in the world and how many people cannot read. But they said also it was like 70% of people that graduate high school never finish a book after graduating high school. So they're like, what's the difference between the huge population in the world that can't read and those that can read and just choose not to? Like, there's no difference. And it made me sad because there's just so much out there that you can take away from it. Yeah, and not even if you like nonfiction, like I've started, my friend that is a therapist has recommended that I have like a brain dump book, just like a fiction book that I can kind of, shut my brain off. It requires that same focus and intention of me being present in order to comprehend what's being read, but I am not thinking about work in reading it. And even in reading that, I've just gained so much more perspective, and I'm like, I can't believe that someone's brain conjured up this world and then they wrote about it. And the nerdy side of me is like in awe that someone's brain thought of that and how creative that is, and that they created all of these little characters in this plot. And I just think that that's so cool. It
is amazing.
Like, I have such admiration for that.
Yeah. The creativity that takes, and then being able to tie in like real life stuff to it to make it a real enough story, to where you can actually like visualize this totally fabricated world.
It's incredible. I think that it would be amazing to write a book one day, just with all I've read. But I find myself so often quoting things that I read and referencing things that I read that almost I fear that if I were to ever write a book, that it wouldn't be original, that it would just be like little fragments. I feel like
there's really no such thing as an original thought at this point, though.
Yeah, we're all just like a mosaic of our experiences.
Really, one of the biggest things I think is that people create, this, they create their own brand. And then, there are people that gravitate to that person because of their brand and they identify with it. And then most of the time, there's really nothing like especially unique that this person's saying. It's just their audience wants to hear them say it. They want to hear what they have to say because
their perception or their interpretation.
Right. Because they value their input more than the next guy's.
That's honestly that's why people prefer different preachers. Like, if you think about it,
yeah.
I mean, everyone is reading from, largely, if you're thinking about like the Catholic religion or whatever,
there's obviously
non-denominational, whatever.
Right.
Okay, so if you're teaching for the Bible, it's the same book that you're all reading, but there are a million different interpretations, and that's
the delivery is more or less what they're there for, is they prefer that preacher's delivery.
That makes me feel a little bit better. Maybe I'll write a book on my vision board.
I think you could do it.
I think so.
Yeah, but I am like a huge advocate for reading, not to the point where I'm going to be like, if you don't read, you're an idiot. But I mean, I do think there is like a willful ignorance that people have if they just say, well, I'm not a reader, because there's so much to gain from reading. And if you tell me you don't like reading, I would have said the exact same thing 4 or 5 years ago. And I should have been reading then. I'm the same person that I was then, for the most part. And I guarantee I could have had a lot of different, a lot of good takeaways from books. I just didn't realize that reading didn't have to be grabbing a history book from, the high school shelf. Yeah. Like, that type of reading is just, it's rough. It's not exciting, but you start to find these books, these different, niche topics that you get into, and it resonates with you, and it's a lot of fun.
And you don't have to be undergoing a complete 180 of your lifestyle. You don't have to be an entrepreneur and starting a business in order to read these. You don't have to be doing anything crazy. I think that you could be just that average Joe that opens a book and you have no idea what it could lead to, or no idea, the avenues that it could open up. Because I think that if you're, like you had called it, a willful ignorance, which is an eloquent way of saying it, but I think that you're lazy if you're aware of the possibilities and you're unhappy in your life, but you're ignoring the avenues that you can take and the resources that you have at your fingertips in order to find an escape plan, or just a route to better it.
Yep.
All right. Third question. You ready?
Let's do it.
When you have a big dream or big ideas, what is the first step in making it happen?
Oof. Typically,
it is me calling Brett and being like, okay, I need you to poke holes in this. Because especially recently, Brett and I have had a lot of conversations where we do a really good job of balancing each other out, because he is the most thorough individual that I have ever met in my entire life. And I can make some knee-jerk decisions. So we really balance each other out, because we have different skill sets. So when I have really big ideas, or I have a big dream, which I have had in the past and I've expressed them to Brett, he does a really good job of helping me think logically through them, because I get so excited. I'm like, I don't know. I look like a cartoon. I just imagine like a cartoon character where their legs are spinning so fast. Like, that's my brain. But it
Scooby-Doo.
Yeah, literally. That's what I imagine it. And then the logical thought doesn't always catch up to it.
Well, and I don't want to sound like the ball and chain over here. There's nuance to it for sure.
No, but you are very logical. We talk about Enneagrams all the time. Brett is a 1, which means he is very realistic. He's principled. He is process oriented.
Yeah, pretty type A.
Yeah, which is good. There's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah. But there's give and take too, you know? Like, you have to do things that sometimes, like, there's logic, and then there's the ability to forecast the possibilities. Like, you can't just be a stick in the mud and just say, well, there can be things that go wrong. Like, there's this, it's this calculated amount of risk that you have to take in life. And I think that is where I think that my skill set comes into play here with what you're describing, is being able to calculate risk appropriately. Because whenever you're a business owner, especially like yours and what you're trying to do in this world, like there's a very nuanced way of working your way around growth and trying to do this as big as possible, and touch as many lives as possible, but do it in a way where it's sustainable. So I think that's where we kind of help balance each other out, because you're a visionary and I kind of help put the pieces in the right places, so to speak.
Yeah, you do a good job of that. I do also want to say, if you have a big dream and you have a big idea, that it is so exciting. And I picture like that Scooby-Doo, his feet just like spinning underneath him. That's how my brain feels at the beginning. But just know that that idea and that like momentum wears down so fast. And I actually have a printed out email that I got from one of Andy Frisella's daily emails. I printed it out probably over a year ago. It's set on my desk. It has coffee stains all over it. It's wrinkled, but it's so important for me to read because it's talking about just mastering the mundane. And it basically says, when you have this big idea or when you get this big opportunity, that it's natural. Everyone gets excited at the beginning. However, not everyone stays course whenever that novelty is worn off. And believe me, it will wear off. Like the excitement of having that business and seeing your name on a t-shirt for this first time and hearing good feedback, like you don't consistently get that same stream of dopamine kicked back to you. So you have to be in it for the long haul and understand that excitement is not meant to be there forever, but it's a matter of continuing course and seeing that long-term vision, which is a hard balance to strike because you want that excitement, but you also have to master that mundane and know that the boring stuff is what will support and build that
right there,
that vision.
Yeah. That's a key point to this question, is while, you have to be able to see the possibilities, you have to be able to see the big thing, and envision the big goal, like mastering the mundane is a necessity in the whole process. Because if you don't, then you'll just never get there, simply put. Like, you have to get really, really good at figuring out like what your plan is going to be and then not stopping.
Not deviating, and just understanding that the people that have gone before you have gone through the same thing. There's no shortcut. There's no magic button. There's no such thing as a quantum leap or an overnight success.
They just didn't quit.
Things, it's just time and continuing to drill, pound the rock.
Yeah, I mean, the simple equation of time and I hate to just say effort, because there has to be like you have to make sure that you're putting the effort in the right direction. But I mean, it's time and effort, really. That's about as simplified version as you can put it. But I mean, the time is an enormous element, and that's the hardest thing, because putting in the effort over that long time horizon, that's the big trick. People want to say like, well, how do you do it? It's time. You have to let time do so much of the work for you, but you can't give up along the way.
This is a very silly example, but it's a very easily quantifiable example. So I don't know how long ago, last year at some point, no, probably 2 years ago, but regardless, I'll give the stakes. So when I started this game plan on Instagram, I had roughly I had built up. I was at 3,000 when I first started like taking Instagram more seriously, 3,000 followers. And then I got it to like 7,000, and I was at 7,000. And then I had a game plan I was going to post one reel, at least one reel every single day, no matter what. And this was before I had professional help. This was before I got any sort of like apps that made it pretty or whatever. This was brutal.
Raw and unedited.
Raw and unedited, and me just like scratching my brain for any sort of creativity. So I said, I'm going to post a reel every single day, because like my thought process was like, eventually one of them's going to pick up. One of them's going to get traction. And then I'll just continue putting my name out there, because when you have a business and you want to be known and you want to be seen and you want to get word of mouth.
As many eyeballs.
The only way, how do you expect anyone to know about you if you're not putting yourself out there, right? So I'm like, I'm at 7,000 followers. I'm going to post a reel every single day. A reel is also much more vulnerable. This was when reels were brand new. They weren't as mainstream as they are now, where only influencers were posting reels. So here I was, 7,000 followers, which may seem like a lot to a lot of people, but I was posting reels just like I saw people with 1 million followers posting reels. And then my followers, my friends that were following me, were messaging me saying, why are you posting like an influencer? This is embarrassing. This is cringy. Why are you doing the lip syncing thing? Like over talking, all of that. But I said, I'm going to post a reel every single day. And I did that for probably 10 months and maybe gained a total of a few hundred followers. For 10 months, I posted a video of myself on the internet every single day. And this was early on, where I wasn't as bold as I am now. And after roughly 10 months, the silliest little reel that I didn't think twice about, there were some when I put so much effort into it, I'm like, Brett, this is going to go viral. I just know it. I'm going to wake up tomorrow, I'm going to have 1 million followers. And it would get like 400 views. Crushing to my soul. After like 10 months, this silly reel, no idea why, blew up. It blew up.
Off.
It got 28 million views just on this one reel.
It was so stupid.
It was so dumb.
It wasn't like it was just like, I don't know. It just didn't have, there was no rhyme or reason to why that particular reel.
No, but that was my whole thought. I'm like, one of these is going to go, right?
I mean,
eventually. Yeah. And this ridiculous one, it wasn't like,
it's a volume game.
Yeah. 28 million views, and that pushed the algorithm to push my content farther and farther, and I went from 7,000 to 112,000 followers literally within 6 weeks.
Yeah, it was fast.
It
just flipped a switch
after posting relentlessly that silly reel every single day. So that it's a silly Instagram is kind of a funny.
But if you hadn't posted that one reel, if you took the day off, then that never would have happened. You know, that's kind of the underlying point there.
If I wasn't just consistent with it and stuck to the game plan. All that being said, it's the little seemingly insignificant things from day to day that really do add up for the details matter. It's not, that last chop of the axe that knocks the tree down. It's every swipe in between, every swipe before that.
Yep.
So if you have a big idea, I recommend you have a Brett Johnson on board to help tether you to reality, but also just chip away, because it's going to get boring. It is going to take much longer than you want it to, but it's going to be exciting. It's going to be worth it. I shared something on my Instagram this morning, and it was just talking about it was a Barbara Corcoran quote, and her episode on Ed Milet's podcast is one of my favorite. She's a killer. She's a shark.
Oh yeah.
On Shark Tank.
Yeah, no,
and she's a shark in real life.
She's a badass.
I love it.
No, she's cool.
But her quote was just talking about the early days of business, when you're in the pit and you're in the trenches with your people. Those are the days she looks back at as her the best days in business. And I read that, and I just it gave me a lot of gratitude for where we're at right now, because that's how I feel. And our team is stretched. And when you're early on in business, the workload doesn't make sense for the output always. Mm-hmm. But it's just having that end goal and that vision in mind, and knowing and having the faith that it'll pan out in the long term. but it just gave me a lot of appreciation for my people, and then the phase we're in right now.
Yeah. And it's really cool to have the people by your side that believe in you and believe in the mission. And that, 10 years from now, it's going to be really, really badass to be able to look at those people that are still by your side and be able to talk about being down in the trenches with them in the beginning.
Yeah. I've got some great people alongside me that I'm pretty excited to tell old war stories with later on. But for now, we'll just keep chipping away. Do you have any?
One day at a time.
That's right. It's the only way you can do it. All right. That was fun. I liked those questions. If you guys have any other questions, shoot them our way. Do you have any last remarks?
I don't. I'm tapped out.
I liked those questions.
Good questions. Good questions.
Yeah. Thanks so much, guys.
If you want to submit more, submit them to
pod@lexijwellness.com.
Nice.
Boom.
Nice.
All right. We'll talk to you guys next week. Keep in touch if you have any questions or topics that you'd like us to touch on. I really enjoyed that one.
Yeah.
All right.
Good stuff.
Bye, guys.